Good evening, respected viewers. This is George from Ireland. In this video, I'm going to explain my opposition to President Trump saying that Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. Anyway, well, that's the news. Trump just announced a couple of days ago the United States now regards Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. He's going to give instructions to the State Department to shift the US Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. So Palestine and Israel both claim Jerusalem as their capital. Muslims, even when speaking English, tend to use the Arabic language name for it, Al-Quds al-Arabi, and it's such a crucial issue for Muslims. There's an Arabic language newspaper called Al-Quds. Anyway, he's fulfilling a campaign promise. So for once, he spoke the truth. Now, generally speaking, telling the truth should be commended. He's pleasing Zionists. There's been a lack of achievement by the Trump administration to date, even at his own terms. That that tax cut for the super rich recently was one of their few tangible accomplishments, even though it's going to screw over the majority of people. So it makes the prospect of peace more distant than ever. The United States tried to play an honest broker between Israel and the Palestinians, which of course was ludicrous because the United States is the armourer and indeed the banker of Israel, giving tens of billions of dollars every year to an already rich country, which does very little for the United States in return. Could you imagine Iran being considered to be the honest broker, mediating between Israel and Palestine? Clearly not, because Iran is very much one-sided, as indeed is the United States, which is Israel's most solid ally, I might say its only ally. So this has infuriated Muslim opinion around the world, and one should generally refrain from doing things which make a huge number of people incandescent. There's no particularly good reason to do this. Israel has claimed Jerusalem as its capital for decades. No US president has done this to date, even someone who is viciously anti-Palestinian like Bill Clinton. So the US government supplies weapons, often for free, to the Israeli government, knowing what's done with them, knowing that thousands of civilians have been killed by the Israeli military. I know military cannot always guarantee that they'll avoid killing civilians, and it's true that Palestinian fighters have killed Israeli civilians, sometimes deliberately, which is of course equally reprehensible. But the US government has given diplomatic cover to Israel's illegal occupation of the West Bank, including East Jerusalem. Jerusalem's a mostly Palestinian city. So it's a very foolish and a very offensive thing to do. The United States desperately needs Muslim cooperation on Iraq, on Iran, on Afghanistan, on Syria. The majority of people in all these countries are Muslims. America's allies in these countries are Muslims. The sort of the moderate Iranians, whom the US would like to steer Iran away from nuclear weapons, they're Muslims. The Iraqi government is almost exclusively Muslim. Anyway, I could go on. Needing Saudi Arabia's cooperation on other issues, and that's just jeopardized that. Israel was always going to be supportive, voting for the United States in the UN on all sorts of issues, just because they occasionally have to pay something back, given that the United States supports them to the hilt. So it was an incredibly moronic thing to do. It's not going to accomplish anything besides, I suppose, shoring up Trump's base among Zionists, mostly Christian fundamentalists. Rahm Emanuel, an American who served in the Israeli military, even he denounced this move. This is occupied land, regarded as illegal by most people. The UN voted almost 50 years ago that Israel should pull out of the West Bank immediately. So one shouldn't always follow the crowd, it's true. That would be lemming logic. I'm going to follow them even if they're running off a cliff, just because the majority doing it must be right. However, generally speaking, the majority are more wise. Who's more likely to be right on this? One country or 191? Who's more likely? So it's staggering that Trump has done this. Why has he done it? Maybe Jared Kushner bent his ear, somebody in his administration talked him into it. So it's a very foolish thing to do. It's going to hugely aggravate the situation. The Palestinians regard Jerusalem as their capital. You know, the city could be shared. And it's just push back the prospect of peace. It's yet more injustice towards the Palestinians. It's enraging the Arab and Muslim world yet again. So I'm afraid I wouldn't expect much better from President Trump. I hope it can be reversed. However, I don't see that happening. I think chauvinism is going to play a part in this. People want to be so macho, not to be reasonable, not to acknowledge that their government has made a terrible mistake. That would be the really courageous thing to do, to put right this injustice and this insult to the Palestinian people. If it was to be a shared capital between the two, that might be viable. Anyway, I for one regard Tel Aviv as being the capital of Israel. Palestinians could have Jerusalem, maybe Israelis too. But what we need to do is work towards consensus and not unilateralism. One wouldn't accept unilateralism from the Palestinian side either. That's all.